Hello, I'm Michael and welcome to my Urushi studio. Today I will show you the process of uwazuri, one of the most mysterious processes in working with urushi. Uwazuri is a process of polishing it's a final stage, it's a process of polishing the surface of finished piece and to achieve a perfect gloss on the surface of the pen and some other objects too. Uwazuri is not subtractive process, it's additive process. Usually polishing, burnishing, sanding, grinding is a subtractive process. So you remove the surface, remove the material from the surface to level it down to the deepest valley of the deepest scratches. So you start with the higher grit sandpaper or any other abrasive and which removes some surface but creates scratches, and you move to the smaller grit which also removes some surface but leaves slightly smaller scratches, and then next grit and finer and finer and finer abrasives until the scratches are invisible for the naked eye, or even invisible in some magnification. There are always unevenness on the surface of polished material, but it's invisible, and if it's properly done, it's invisible even in direct light. With uwazuri, you add material, so you fill in the scratches, you fill in unevenness of the urushi final layer with a kijomi-urushi or any other special high-quality raw lacquer designed for uwazuri. You also polish with the finest abrasive I know, but this polishing has slightly different way of working. So you polish a layer which is cured, and final polishing is designed to remove any unnecessary oils from the surface of the finished work and slightly round the finest scratches, finest valleys and on the surface. Here I have several pens which are on different stages of uwazuri. I will do something unorthodox because I wanted to show you different techniques used during uwazuri. This pen is on the final stage, and I will show on it, on one part of it I will show you polishing with Migaki powder, and on the others I will show you applying the final layer of kijomi-urushi and wiping it off. And on my other pens I will show you the process of applying kijomi-urushi mixed with camphor. For initial layers of uwazuri, you mix urushi with camphor oil or with turpentine oil to thin it down and let it penetrate the surface better. This process is not only for filling in the scratches or filling in any unevenness, but also to saturate the pigments, to saturate any porous areas with urushi. And to let it saturate it better, you thin it with a thinner. The best thinners for urushi is always camphor oil, but turpentine can be used too. So let me start with preparing kijomi-urushi mixed with camphor oil for one of the pens. I will show you just one piece of each pen, not to bore you down to death. So we are starting with kijomi-urushi. I apply it on my surface directly because it's much easier to mix. I saw recently fellow urushi artisan from India. He was mixing urushi with turpentine with his finger. I can do that also, but I will not promote unsafe behavior with urushi because those of us who are immune, so he's probably immune to, can do this, but for 90% of you it will be very dangerous. So I have some urushi, I have quite a lot of experience, so I can just add, not measuring it exactly, I will add just 1 drop of, maybe 1.5 drops of camphor oil to this urushi. For the first layer, I added much more. It was almost half and half camphor and urushi. For the second, it was 25–30%, and this is the third application of kijomi, and it's just like maybe 10% or something like that. For the next layer, I will probably move to pure kijomi-urushi only. I use Lintfree wipes for this process, but also mavata can be used. Mavata is a silk, like it's a cotton. It looks like cotton, but it's silk. I don't know how to define it properly. So you just take some of it and rub it into the surface of the pen. It's good to work in a good light, several sources of strong light, to see if you missed any spots, any areas on the pen, because it really needs to saturate it on every surface, every area, and you need to be sure that it's everywhere. You can use slightly more to be sure, because we will be wiping it off anyway in a moment. So it's done. So the next step is to wipe it off. So we apply kijomi-urushi and then wipe it off completely. It just soaks in the surface, it just feels the unevenness, and there should be no visible. It will be slightly more shiny, but you cannot see a layer of lacquer on the surface. That's it. Another layer of kijomi-urushi, another step of uwazuri. After 5, sometimes 6 of such layers, so once we move to pure kijomi-urushi, we polish surface of the fully cured object. So kijomi cures very fast. It's very thin layer, so it cures in 6 hours in a typical humidity of the furo. But for the layer which is applied last before polishing, it's good to leave it in the furo for 48 hours to be sure that it's absolutely fully cured. You polish it with Migaki powder, and for initial polishing you mix this powder with some oil. Mix it with oil and then rub it and burnish with a very soft cloth like flannel or a special lint-free cloth as I use, designed for polishing and for burnishing. You polish the surface of the pen, then clean it from the residue of this powder and oil which could be left on the surface, and prepare it for another layer of uwazuri. The other pen I showed you is on the final stage. So I was going to apply the final layer of urushi on this pen, but I wanted to show you also how polishing, the final polishing is done. I will do something unorthodox, because I will apply urushi on one part and I will polish the other one just to show you how it works. I use pure urushi this time, without any additives, and the procedure is exactly the same. Slightly more difficult to apply. It's not very viscous because it's raw lacquer with high contents of water. That's why it cures quite fast, and you need to make sure it's rubbed in very well into the surface. Not exactly like the previous pen I showed you, but this time it's pure kijomi-urushi without no turpentine or camphor oil added. And similarly, you wipe it off with a cloth. It's very important to be lint-free, not to leave any dust, any lint on the surface. Wipe it off and back to the furrow. But as I told you, I wanted to show you how you polish the final polishing with Migaki powder. Final polishing is done by hand. You can use some specially designed pads for this, but I use my hand only, exactly as in Japan, and very traditional way. So I take a little bit of Migaki powder, apply it on the pan, and I use the internal part of my palm, this here, to polish it. This abrasive is extremely fine. Traditionally it was made from deer horns, baked or burned to ash and then sifted, and it was used for polishing, but right now is something synthetic, I think, but it's extremely fine. It's one of the most expensive abrasives I bought, but the amount delivered lasts ages. So I think I will have what I bought will last me for several years of polishing final layers of urushi. You can reapply a little bit, repeat the process. For this step, I think that much better grips, much better stance would be great, so I'm very happy about this grips I received from Nabi from Wet n Wise, because it will make my work much easier with this. You can also assemble the pen and polish it assembled, but remember about areas which are not accessible where a pen is assembled, like for example those one here. You are almost not removing anything from the surface. You're just rounding the finest scratches, absolutely not visible even at 10 or 20 time magnification, and voila, done. What I do during this work, I usually, after initial application of initial layers and initial polishing, I examine the surface of the pen with magnifying glass, and I use magnifying binoculars with different magnifications available, so I can use just 6-time magnification or add a loop and have 24 time magnification at the same time. And it's very important to have a proper light, so these binoculars have direct light, which makes there are no shadows on the surface, so I can see exactly how it looks like. It's not perfect yet, unfortunately, so I will examine it later and probably apply several more layers of kijomi. That's the process, more or less. It's, as I said, it's the most magical, the most unknown process and the most unintuitive process in urushi. And one thing is very important: if you have an urushi pen and it's scratched, it's dull, or you see the very fine small scratches, never polish it yourself. As I said, polishing urushi is an additive process, not subtractive. So polishing it on a polishing wheel or with a typical polishing abrasives used on resin pens or ebonite pens will destroy the surface of urushi, so never do this. It's much better to reach out to urushi artisan or to makers of the pen and ask them for help in such case. That's it for today. I will finish my work with those pens and uwazuri. But like this video if you want to see more, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye.